Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a turn-based game, that's just common sense. But every now and then, a few brave souls dare to ask the question, what if it wasn't? Well, if you've ever thought that, Crystrons may be just the deck for you. This archetype of water machines focuses on synchro summoning on the opponent's turn, making it also your turn. For those who believe that turns are just a suggestion, welcome to the Unnecessarily Complicated Guide to Crystron. To understand Crystrons, we first need to look at their tuners. The Crystron tuners all have effects that allow them to synchro summon on the opponent's turn, which can be used for interruption or just to generate advantage. Quan, Citri, and Rion were the first Crystron tuners, and they shared a quick effect to, during your opponent's main battle phase, special summon a non-tuner monster from a specific zone, then immediately synchro summon a machine synchro using only those monsters. Quan summons from the hand, Citri the graveyard, and Rion the banishment. These Crystron tuners are the basis of the deck, and they give some insight on how the deck works. We want to play on the opponent's turn by using their quick effects, and since they summon their own non-tuner for the synchro summon, a board of just Crystron tuners can be deceptively threatening. Unfortunately, as these effects do restrict themselves to only 2 materials for the synchro summon, with the low levels of our tuners, this does lock us out from a good chunk of synchro monsters. Luckily, this problem was solved by the introduction of our premier tuner, Crystron Crystallos. Unlike our other tuners, its quick effect can be activated on either player's turn when your opponent activates a card or effect, special summoning any other Crystron monster from the deck, and immediately synchro summoning a machine synchro using that monster. You may have noticed that not only does Crystallos itself not have to be part of the synchro summon, any number of other monsters can be part of the synchro summon as well, giving this effect much more flexibility. To top it all off, Crystallos also comes with an additional graveyard effect, allowing you to banish it from the graveyard to destroy a synchro monster you control, and special summon 2 Crystron monsters from the deck, at the cost of locking you into machine monsters from the extra deck for the rest of the turn. This effect essentially acts as an archetypal desynchro, allowing us to trade our synchro monster for any 2 Crystrons of our choice from our deck, while also triggering any effects of destruction the synchro monster may have had. Unlike our other tuners, Crystallos is not just an endboard piece, it's also an important part of our combo that we want access to as soon as possible. That being said, our other tuners still have their uses, and they're still important interruptions for the deck. In addition to Crystallos, our endboards will often include 1 or 2 of them. But how exactly do we access our tuners? Well, that's what our non-tuners are for. While our tuners filled similar roles to each other, our non-tuners can broadly be separated into 2 categories, level 4 and lower, and level 5 and higher. Beginning with our level 4 and lower non-tuners, they all share the same first effect, allowing you to target a face-up card you control and destroy it to special summon a Crystron tuner from the deck, at the cost of locking you to special summoning machine synchros from the extra deck for the rest of the turn. In addition, they each can be banished from the graveyard for a unique effect. Smiger searches for a spell or trap and Disfun searches for a monster, while Priasalto special summons a Crystron monster from the hand, and Rostick special summons a level 1 non-tuner token. These non-tuners are our main ways to access our tuners, being able to special summon any of them to the field with ease, while also getting bodies in the graveyard or banishment for their effects. However, keep in mind that you can only use one of these effects per turn, which means that we'll try to avoid using the field effects of Crystrons with relevant grave effects, particularly Smiger and Disfun. Now, for something completely different, we have our level 5 and higher non-tuners. Firstly, we have Crystron Self-Fafnir, a level 5 machine. If it is in the hand or graveyard, you can discard a Crystron card to special summon it, but if you do, you must destroy a card you control. This may seem like a pretty heavy cost for just a special summon, but we're happy to just destroy Self-Fafnir itself, as its second effect can special summon any Crystron monster from the deck when it is destroyed. This means that Self-Fafnir actually acts more like an emergency teleport for the deck, which is crucial, especially since it happens to be one of our few ways to directly special summon a non-tuner. When playing Crystron, whether he destroys himself or someone else does it for him, expect Self-Fafnir to be destroyed a lot. It's rough out there. On the other hand, our other level 5 non-tuner, Crystron Self-Hole, would rather be the one doing the destroying, being able to special summon itself from the hand or graveyard by destroying a Crystron card you control. If normal special summon, it can send up to 2 Crystron cards with different names from your deck to the graveyard, which frankly, is absurd. Whether we need searches, special summons, or anything else, by dumping the right combination of cards, Self-Hole is able to get us there, bridging us to the rest of our combo with ease. As a result, most of our combos rely on getting access to Self-Hole as soon as possible, usually making it our first search target. Lucky for us, we have plenty of ways to do so. One of our best ways to do so is with our continuous spell, Crystron Inclusion, which when activated allows us to search for a Crystron card. It also prevents the Crystrons from being destroyed by battle the first time each turn, which is useful to prevent your Crystrons from being run over in the battle phase. Lastly, if it is in the graveyard, it can be banished to special summon a Crystron monster from the graveyard. The synergy Inclusion has with the rest of the deck is obvious. Most of the time, we'll be using it to search for Suffered Hole, and since it is a continuous spell, it can then be destroyed to summon it, which also happens to put Inclusion in the graveyard to use its other effect. There's really not much else to say. Inclusion is just a solid spell, but unfortunately, it also happens to be our only spell. Well, only spell worth running anyway. On the other hand, we have a few traps, but by far the most important is Crystron Cluster, a continuous trap that prevents Crystron cards you control from being banished by your opponent's card effects. More importantly, it can target a face-up card on the field, or 2 if you control a Crystron Synchro monster to destroy by shuffling a Crystron card from your graveyard or banishment into the deck. Not only is Crystron Cluster a solid interruption on its own, it can also help trigger the destruction effects of our own cards, and it's also key to our grind game. Without Cluster, our ways to retrieve cards from the banishment are limited, to say the least, and with how often the deck likes to banish cards, it can leave us out of gas pretty easily. Cluster is more important to the deck than you might realize, so we'll almost always be looking to set this up on our first turn. As for our other traps, they fill more niche roles that don't always come up, so they usually aren't worth running. Luckily, Inclusion and Cluster are more than good enough, and we're happy to search them whenever we can. Of course, no Synchro deck is complete without its Synchro monsters, and Crystron is no exception. However, as most of our Synchro summoning will be done on our opponent's turn, there's very few Synchros we actually want to summon on our turn. The main exception to this being Crystron Eleskeletas, a level 7 machine Synchro with 3 effects. Firstly, while on the field, it reduces the attack and defense of your opponent's monsters by 500. Secondly, if Synchro Summon, it can add a Crystron card from your graveyard or banishment to your hand. And lastly, if this Synchro Summon card is destroyed, it can special summon a Crystron monster from your graveyard or banishment. It wouldn't be too much of a stretch to say that Eleskeletas is the perfect Synchro monster for Crystron. Not only does it allow us to recover resources that we need, such as cards discarded for Sophiphnia or sent by Suffered Hole, its floating effect also makes it the premier target for Tristalosa's graveyard effect, allowing us to use it proactively to continue with our plays. For good reason, Eleskeletas is almost always the first, and sometimes only Synchro we'll be making on our turn. The other Synchro monster we may want to consider summoning on our turn is Crystron Condax, a level 4 Synchro tuner. Like our other Crystron tuners, it has the quick effect to Synchro Summon during our opponent's main and battle phase, but unlike the other tuners, it can Synchro Summon any monster, even non-machine Synchros. Additionally, if this Synchro Summon card is destroyed, it can special summon a non-Synchro Crystron monster from the graveyard. Quandex used to be core to the Crystron game plan, although it's taken a little bit of a backseat with the addition of Tristalos. Still, it's going to be our main Synchro tuner for the situations where we need one, allowing us to not only access non-machine Synchros, but also those that require Synchro tuner as material. The rest of our Synchro monsters are usually going to be summoned on our opponent's turn using our quick effects, and they have powerful effects on summon that can be used as disruption. For instance, Crystron Phoenix, a level 9 Synchro monster that requires a Synchro tuner and non-tuner Synchro monster to summon. If Synchro summoned, it can banish all your opponent's spells and traps from both the field and the graveyard, which can be backbreaking. If this Synchro Summon card is destroyed, it can special summon any other monster from your graveyard, which is a great floating effect that we can trigger on our own with cards like Tristalos and Cluster. Unfortunately, while Phoenix is without a doubt a strong card that can single-handedly win certain matchups, its material requirement leaves a lot to be desired, often making it hard to summon. Luckily, we do have an easier to summon alternative in Crystron Korangandrax, our other level 9 machine Synchro. Unlike Phoenix, it doesn't require any Synchro monster to summon, only requiring 2 or more tuners and 1 non-tuner to summon, which is significantly easier. But don't worry, it still comes with a similarly powerful effect. If Synchro Summon, Korangandrax can target monsters from your opponent's field and graveyard up to the number of materials used for its summon and banish them. And like our other Synchro monsters, if this Synchro Summon card is destroyed, it can special summon a monster, this time from the banishment. Notably, it doesn't have to be your own monster, which means that sometimes we can steal relevant cards from our opponent, such as the ones banished by its own first effect. Unlike Phoenix, Korangandrax's much lighter conditions make it easier to set up, which makes it the main monster we'll be summoning on our opponent's turn most of the time. Other extra deck monsters that will often come up include other machine Synchros. Notably, FA Dawn Dragster gives us a spell and trap negate at a convenient level of 7, and Navy Dragon Mech provides us with an easier to summon level 9 with a targeted negation on summon. If you want to lean more into non-tuner synchros, XL Synchro gives us another quick synchro effect that can summon any monster, and with a good amount of options that can be used. But aside from synchros, we can also use Xyz monsters, in particular the Cyber Dragon package of Infinity and Nova. We can summon these using our level 5 monsters, which gives us an easily accessible Omni Negate, which is always useful. Lastly, while we don't really want to be link summoning with this deck, Clockwork Knight is a useful link monster that helps us get monsters into the graveyard while also being able to revive our other monsters if needed. Qliphort Genius also has some use in this deck since we can trigger its such effect relatively easily, allowing us to search Self-Held Hole and Self-Fafnir, or even Terran King Regulus for another Omni Negate. This is the basic combo of the deck that requires just Crystron Inclusion. We begin by activating Crystron Inclusion to search for Self-Held Hole, and we'll activate its effect to destroy Inclusion to special summon itself. Once summoned, we'll use Self-Held Hole's effect to send Self-Fafnir and Disfern to the graveyard. Now we'll activate the effect of Disfern in the graveyard, banishing it to search for Smyger. From here, we'll activate Self-Fafnir's graveyard effect, discarding the Smyger we searched to special summon and destroy itself. Afterwards, we'll activate its effect on destruction to special summon Tristalos from our deck. Now, we banish Smyger from our graveyard to search for Crystron Cluster. Afterwards, we'll Synchro Summon for Crystron Eleskeletus, activating its effect on Synchro Summon to add the banished Smyger to our hand. We'll then activate the effect of Tristalos in our graveyard, destroying the Eleskeletus to special summon Self-Fafnir and Rose Nyx from our deck. Afterwards, remember to activate Eleskeletus' effect on destruction to special summon our banished Tristalos back to the field. From here, we'll banish Inclusion from our graveyard to special summon the Self-Held Hole back from our graveyard, and using it and Self-Fafnir, we'll actually summon Cyber Dragon Nova and then Cyber Dragon Infinity. We'll go ahead and normal summon Smyger before activating Rose Nyx to destroy it and special summon Citri from our deck. Finally, we can go ahead and set our Crystron Cluster before passing our turn. During our opponent's turn, we'll activate Citri to special summon Self-Fafnir from our graveyard and Synchro Summon for our FA Dawn Dragster. And lastly, when your opponent activates a counter effect, we can activate Tristalos, special summoning Rion from our deck to Synchro Summon Koran Gandrax. This is our other one-cut combo that requires just Crystron Smyger. We begin by normal summoning Smyger and linking it off for a Clockwork Knight. We'll then banish Smyger from our graveyard to search for Crystron Inclusion. Like before, we'll activate Inclusion to search for Self-Held Hole, and activate Self-Held Hole's effect to destroy Inclusion and special summon itself. This time, however, Self-Held Hole will send Tristalos and Cluster instead. We'll go ahead and banish Inclusion from our graveyard, special summoning the Tristalos we sent. Once again, we'll Synchro Summon for Crystron Eleskeletus, but this time, we'll activate its effect to add Cluster from our graveyard to our hand. Now we activate the effect of Tristalos in our graveyard, destroying Eleskeletus to special summon Self-Fafnir as well as Tisfern from our deck. Again, remember to activate the graveyard effect of Eleskeletus, special summoning our banished Tristalos back to the field. We'll go ahead and Synchro Summon for FA Dawn Dragster to get Tristalos in our graveyard. This now allows us to activate Clockwork Knight, tributing our Tisfern to bring back Tristalos. Now we can banish Tisfern from our graveyard to search for Priya Salto, which we'll use to discard for the Self-Fafnir in our graveyard, special summoning itself and destroying itself. When destroyed, we'll use its effect to special summon Rose Nyx from our deck. And lastly, we'll activate Rose Nyx's effect, destroying the Clockwork Knight to special summon Citri from our deck. Afterwards, we can go ahead and set our cluster and pass the turn. During the opponent's turn, like before, when your opponent activates the counter effect, we can activate Tristalos, special summoning Rion from our deck and Synchro Summon Koran Gandrax. However, this time, since we already used Dawn Dragster, we'll use Citri to special summon Eleskeletus from our graveyard, Synchro Summoning Navy Dragon Mech instead. This combo is a 2-card combo requiring Crystron Self-Fafnir and any other Crystron card. We'll begin by activating Self-Fafnir, discarding the Crystron card to special summon itself and then destroy itself, which will special summon Self-Fed Hole from our deck. On summon, Self-Fed Hole will send Tisfern and Smyger to our graveyard. We'll go ahead and banish Smyger from our graveyard to search for Inclusion, and afterwards, we'll also banish Tisfern to search for Tristalos. Now we'll normal summon Tristalos and synchro summon Alloskeletos, but this time we'll use this effect to add Sulfat Hole back from our graveyard to our hand. We'll activate Crystron Inclusion to search for Cluster. Afterwards, we'll activate Sulfat Hole, destroying the inclusion to special summon itself. And afterwards, we can banish inclusion from the graveyard to special summon Sulfafnia from our graveyard. And once again, we can XC summon Cyber Dragon Nova, and then Infinity. We can now banish Tristalos from our graveyard to destroy Alloskeletos, this time special summoning Citri and Prayer Salto from our deck. As usual, Alloskeletos will special summon our banished Tristalos when it is destroyed. The last thing we need to do is activate Prayer Salto, destroying itself to special summon Rion from our deck. And now, we can go ahead and set our cluster and pass the turn. During the opponent's turn, as usual, when your opponent activates a counter effect, Tristalos can be activated. This time special summoning Rosenix from our deck, but as usual, synchro summoning Koran Gandrax. And lastly, of course, we'll use Citri to special summon Alloskeletos from our graveyard, and synchro summon Navy Dragon Mech. Here's a sample deck list. While Crystron is pretty fixed in the main deck, it does still have a few options you can play around with. This is just a standard build that doesn't do anything too fancy, so feel free to change it as you like. And that's Crystron. Despite the new cards, they're still sticking to their old gimmicks, and you know what? They still hold up. Unlike some other decks that got support, the new tools feel like a natural progression from what they did originally, and their old cards still being important to the strategy is always nice. It does feel kinda nice seeing them pop back up again after nearly a decade of absence. Well, you know, besides him. If you enjoyed, feel free to drop a like, comment, or even subscribe. These videos take a ton of time to make and I'd really appreciate it.